Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. And today I'm privileged and honored to be joined by Kelly, all the way from America. So, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming along and sharing your story. Now, this podcast is all about having those difficult, challenging conversations, helping people to be having them, but also helping people to navigate the complexities of life. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'd love you to just share with our audience your story and what's going on for you at the moment and what you're working on.
Yes, thanks, Nikki. Honored to be here with you. And so I'm Kelly Edmondson. I am a nurse from Ohio here in the States. And so I have really dedicated my life to caring for people in trauma in difficult times. I chose trauma ICU. And so my patients for decades have been people in car accidents, suffering violence, burns, really acute, disruptive kind of traumatic events in life. And, I chose that because during my school rotations, I found I just had a heart and really a calling for caring for people at their most vulnerable. And so you learn that you care for the patients themselves. Sometimes they're aware of the care, sometimes they're not conscious and aware. But you also have the opportunity to care for families who really need someone who's not afraid to engage in those difficult conversations. And I really found a lot of meaning from that work. And so I've dedicated my life to that. It's been incredibly rewarding, challenging for sure, but I would never, in hindsight, I'd make the same choice 100 times over. In 2023, for the first time, I was on the other side of the bed, so to speak. My oldest son, who was an epileptic, died unexpectedly in his sleep. And so the caregiver became the person who needed care. And I learned so much about trauma and how to show up for people. I felt like I was very talented and good in this space. But what I learned was I am a hospital clinician. So my entire career in nursing has been spent in the hospital outside of a brief stint. And that's the beginning. It's just the beginning, right? I've come to say that the funeral, the services, that's really the starting line.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about that, Kelly, about your own experience. And I can only imagine how challenging that was for you to be on the other side.
Yeah, grief is so ongoing. And so initially, parents should not outlive their children. Everyone knows that. And so we were flooded with support, condolences, I'll say, and colleagues, friends, family, everyone really showed up. His funeral was standing room only. And, those initial couple of weeks, I felt like I was literally hugged by my community. But the reality is people go back to living. And you're at home, and the gap of those people, that silence is really deafening. And so a couple of weeks into this, I realized that, like me prior to this happening, people have no idea how significant the silence is in the weeks and months following grief. And so my son died January 3rd. Here in the States, Mother's Day is in May. And so May was coming, and it's a big deal for us. There's lots of banners and celebrations, and I had never felt more alone and misunderstood. And it was a dark time. And my sister and my mother and my niece, they all decided that they weren't not going to let me do that alone. And so they flew down to me in Florida, and my daughter and my son's girlfriend, they all converged on me Mother's Day weekend. And they came with tears, but laughter and love and loss. And we experienced the fullness of a day that's dedicated to being with the recognition that day would never be the same for me.
Mm.
And their presence made a day that I had spent weeks agonizing over and feeling tension and stress about. They made it tolerable. They made me feel loved and supported. And I said, everyone needs this, right? I don't know why they knew to do that, but they did.
Mm.
And so, that really began a cascade of events that have allowed me to really want to focus on supporting people when the silence is loudest, giving them support through these anxiety producing dates, these difficult moments, these times you don't want to be alone, but logistically, it's hard for people to show up. And
Mm.
so, I am continuing to care for people. Much of my career was caring for their bodies. And now I feel like I'm really doing work like this to educate people so they can take care of the souls of the people that they love when they are living through loss.
Mm. And so tell us a little bit about what that looks like, how
Yeah.
you manage that. And I'd really love to hear more about your son. What's your son's name?
His name was Darius. So he was born on Christmas Day, which is absolutely perfect because he just was the life of the party. Everything he did was big.
Yeah.
It was big. And so, he was filled the energy in every room he entered. It's really fun when he's 20. It's less fun when he's 6. Um,
Yeah.
Educators don't always appreciate that in the second grade class. And so I spent quite a bit of time with his teachers, I'll say that. But he was determined from the beginning.
Mm.
And so I saw this as a baby. I thought, why is my baby insistent when he doesn't get something right? We all know it, we all hear it, we all feel it.
Yeah.
But what that turned into was an incredible amount of resilience. He was diagnosed with epilepsy at 18.
Mm.
You can understand it's a very difficult time to get a chronic diagnosis that requires medicines, doctor's appointments, interrupts your ability to drive.
Mm.
Very difficult time to get that. And because of that, it interrupted his ability to move on to school and all those things immediately with his classmates because we had a lot to figure out. So he was a little delayed in getting through college and getting settled on his career, but he would never would have stopped
Mm.
the effort on that. And so he became a realtor with the focus on helping first-time home buyers achieve their dream. And so he was so beloved by his clients. They showed up to his funeral.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We lived, he lived in Ohio, which is a very cold climate. Couldn't drive when he started having seizures again later. And so would take a bus to go meet his clients in single digit weather. He just was really dedicated to what he did. Just always a fighter.
Mm.
And so, in his memory and in his honor, I feel like it's important to take that resilience and try to help people in their grief journey, find resilience, find hope, find support.
Yeah.
And so that has become timely presence. And so what we do, we settled on that name. Life is so interesting.
Mm.
Initially, we had wanted to name this the memory box because memories are so valuable, which means living in the moment is so valuable to make the memories.
Mm.
But we ended up with intellectual property issues and concerns, and the memory box wasn't going to be a name that we could use. And my attorney said, think about what you do. What is it that you do? Memories are a thing, but what do you do? And this whole idea of being present for people at the time that they're likely to be the most vulnerable really helped us come to our name. So I've come to love it. Although I was forced out, I was forced into it. I've come to love our name. And so what we do So a couple of things that we do. I've gone on to become a certified grief counselor and really spent time learning and understanding this space. One of the things that we do is to help businesses and leaders and other organizations support their people who are in grief. So people don't really understand, right, the concepts of that. But what we know is that grief permeates the life. And so employees come back less productive, higher rates of absenteeism, higher rates of attrition. But that systems that have good grief support that's built, that resonates, can help turn some of that around. And so we help leaders and systems learn how to support people at their most vulnerable. Our core business is really a grief gift experience, is what I'll call it. And we allow people who want to support someone who's bereaved, whether that be a loved one, a colleague, we allow them to provide a year's worth of heirloom quality, personalized, meaningful gifts on the dates that research say are going to be the most difficult for the bereaved. So it's predictable that on the birthday, on your spouse's birthday, your departed spouse's birthday is going to be a difficult day for you. We know that Mother's Day for bereaved mom is a significant place. The holidays are always muted, right, for those people. And so for an entire year, we show up on those emotionally charged days with gifts of love and light and messaging that says, we know today's different for you, but we remember your Darius. And we are thinking of you, and you are not alone on this journey. And those moments have translated into some of the best feedback and just moments of peace for people. I'll share the first person who ever got one of our packages. She was a woman who had delivered a baby and her daughter died at 48 hours of age. And so we had just launched, and her boss, her leader, knew that this employee had this stillbirth, this early child death a year earlier. And she didn't know how to address it. She didn't know what to do, but she wanted to do something. So she heard about our service. She ordered it. And so on the day anniversary that this child died, the mom said it's the darkest day ever because no one remembers a baby they didn't meet, right? No one remembers this. So she walked out to her mailbox just to get some fresh air out of the house. And there's a package with a dove on it. And she thought, well, what is this? And she opened it. And the gift is a crystal sun catcher. So she's in her house by a window. And she says, suddenly, the darkest day, she had prisms dancing on the walls in her kitchen. And her response, her feedback to me was really that God was in the details that day. It brought light and peace to her that she didn't know that she'd be able to capture. And she felt seen. And so that's the intent. That's what we're here to do. We're here to let people know that the journey's hard. It's the cost of love. We know that, but you don't have to be alone. And for people who want to do something, it's very difficult, right? How do I remember your wedding date? How do I remember the birthday? All of those things are difficult. And it's not that people don't care, but we're all living, and we should be in our own moments. And so we make it logistically easy for you to be able to show up for someone that you care about in the moments that matter the most with a one-time effort. And so that's us. That's Timely Presence. That's our brand. We are trying to reimagine the way people are grieving all over the world.
Kelly, that's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing and telling us about your son Darius as well. yeah, and like I can see when you're talking about him, I can imagine him being like this mischievous 6-year-old in the class and having that real presence about him and that energy and that resilience, having to go through that epilepsy, as you say, an incredibly challenging time anyway in life, when you're 18, and then and that passion around looking after the people that he was a realtor to. So just a lovely story, and then creating something more from it. And if you don't mind, I just want to ask you a couple of questions around, because some of the questions I get asked are, how do I move on? How do I have a conversation with somebody? And I've just recently released a podcast this morning, actually, where I talk about my own grief around my dad. And one of the biggest things I found was nobody really wanted to talk about him. They kind of avoided me. A lot of people avoided me. Some people, not everybody, of course, but I think often people don't know what to say, or they don't know how to bring the subject up, as you say, around how do you do that as an employee? And I just wondered if you might have some, and not just as an employee, but as a friend as well. How do you do that? I just wondered if you've got some tips for our listeners around how they might be able to do that.
You've brought up a great point because we hear it often, right? I
Mm.
don't want to remind them, and I say it's the one thing I can't forget, right? It's the one thing I can't forget. And so, what I say to people is what people are not expecting is perfection. They're not expecting a bunch of bereavement support specialists that are arriving suddenly that my friend has become a grief counselor.
Mm.
The acknowledgement that there's something heavy in the air, right? And the recognition that I don't even know what to say is an okay thing to say, right? Listen, I know this is heavy. I can't imagine what you're carrying. I don't know what to say to fix
Mm.
this, but I want you to know I'm here.
Mm.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
I'm here. You're not alone. I can't fix it. And I can't even know what it is that you're carrying, but I care about you.
Mm.
And those words are so small. My sister, when this happened, we would just sit on the phone. She lived states away from me, plane right away, but she wanted to be there. And so she would just call
Mm.
and we would literally just sit on the phone. And sometimes we would cry and sometimes we would share a story about him and laugh and talk about that one time he got grounded. Um, um, but that's how we shared space.
Mm.
And she couldn't fix it. You're right. Grief isn't fixable, but she was there. And
Mm.
I will never forget those silent phone calls we had that carried me through some of my darkest days.
Yeah, I love that, Kelly, because I think sometimes people are so worried about saying the wrong thing or not knowing what to say, but actually all you need to do is just be present with somebody and let them know that you're there. And that sentence you just said there, that grief is not fixable. I think that kind of that really resonates with me, that sentence. And I think because grief is not fixable, and you don't have to fix it. And often as human beings, we're like, I need to solve the problem. How can I solve the problem? And you're absolutely right. It's not a problem that anybody can solve. So that's great for those great tips around, you don't have to have the right words. You can just be really honest and say, I don't have those. And what about if you are somebody who has lost somebody recently and you're just now making your way back to finding how you find your way forward, and going back to, I won't use the word normal because nothing's normal after grief, and everybody is still carrying on, and it's like, how come the world is still carrying on? I don't understand it. Have you got some tips, please, for those people who are trying to find their way forward?
I very early I entered grief counseling because I just knew that that was something that was going to be important for me. And
Mm.
one one of the things that my counselor said from the very beginning was take good care. That it was her closing statement to me at every session. Take
Yeah.
good care. And it took me a while. Why does she say this to me? But grief is such a physiological impact. It affects everything. It affects the way you sleep, the pace with which your brain works, your appetite, right? And healing starts. It has to start spiritually. It'll start with you, but you can jumpstart it with some of your physiological actions, intentionally making time for quiet, forced sleep, right? So some of that is putting digital devices away. It is getting in a dark room. It's creating a cadence where you're interrupted for sleep. Some of that, sometimes you need to see a provider, physician to get assistance with that. But sleep is one of the most valuable things that we can have. It allows your mind a chance to rest, which we don't often do when we're in high stress situations. Forced food. So one of the things that you don't want to do is eat. And it's one of the first things everyone wants to send you is food. That's culturally what we do. But taking the time to have intentional small meals that are high protein, when you need to have energy, interjecting some fiber and carbs in there, it's really important for how you can show up in the day. Because when you can begin getting up, taking a brief walk outside to get fresh air. Sunlight is one of the most healing medicines that we have on the planet, one that we underappreciate, undervalue, and underutilize. And so you intentionally, physically placing yourself in a place to be healed can begin the healing process. Two is just recognizing what you said. I am the before and after Kelly.
Yeah.
Right. That is true. And I've had to come to accept that. What you have to say is, what are the parts of me that made me so uniquely me and that are so valuable to me? I'm not willing to give those things up. What part of me can't die with this relationship? And those are the things that you cultivate and you lean into. And so if you're an artist and art brings you joy and it brings you passion, then figure out a way to reintroduce art to your life. And if you are, if you enjoy travel will look different. My neighbor lost her husband 3 months after I lost Darius. And so we went on this journey together, which I will say, finding groups and finding people who are going through the journey with you is very advantageous. But travel is something that she loved, and she and Mike traveled together all the time. So she felt like she had to give that up. And then she found travel groups at church. She found travel groups in her network, and she began doing this thing that brought her so much joy again. And so while it looks different, she hasn't had to give up something that brings her so much joy. And so I think it's intentional that you go back and, who am I? What do I love about me and my life? And how do I bring that forward? The last thing I'll say is rituals matter a lot. We have a lot of rituals, particularly in the States, around death. There's a lot. And the up to the celebration of life, the planning the obituary, planning the funeral, all these events keep you very, very busy. But we don't have very many rituals for the survivors. We just don't. So I've created them. We're going to have them. And so Darius's birthday is on Christmas when the whole world's celebrating. And my first Christmas, I thought, how am I going to live through this holiday season with all this joy? And I'm morose right now. So we decided to take a holiday. And so that's what we do for the Christmas season. We take a holiday. On Christmas Day, we go out to dinner and we have a birthday dinner for him. And our focus is to celebrate his life, what mattered to him. I take ashes with me so he gets to go all over. Darius is going to be all over the world by the time we're done. The places he didn't go, we get to do. But I am reframing that day. And in a way that allows us to celebrate the love that existed, not just the loss. And I think creating new rituals, whatever that looks like, if that is just the way you light a candle, if it's the way that you go to dinner that night to reference that, whatever that is, create rituals that begin to bring peace into you. And so that those days that are triggering become more celebratory than melancholy. We have the power to begin reframing things. And I think don't give up on your power and your ability to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And because you mentioned there that that you've had two lives, one before and one after losing Darius, and I think and use the word acceptance as well, which I know Kubler-Ross in her grief stages she uses the word acceptance, and I often think that acceptance is key. And once we find the acceptance, it's easier to start moving forward a little bit more. I mean, that's just my personal view. I'm not saying it's right. I think with acceptance, but there's also no time limit on when you get to acceptance. It's different for everybody. And some days, I don't know about you, sometimes I accept, and other days I'm like, oh no, I don't accept today.
That's
I
right.
don't
That's right.
accept. And it's okay to feel like that, and it's okay to go through different emotions all of the time, and to recognize that it's your unique individual experience, and there is no right or wrong
That's
around it.
exactly right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very cyclical, right? Grief is very cyclical. We know that it
Mm.
ebbs and flows, and it should, because you love your father,
Yeah.
right? I love my son, and I'm darn mad that he's not here. I really am, right? I'm really upset about it. I can't change it though. And so, but I have the right to have days where I'm just really upset about, why we didn't change this med. He died from epilepsy in his sleep. So why I wasn't more insistent about changing medications, why he didn't have an epilepsy dog. I mean, you continue to have those feelings. And
Mm.
then there's days where I'm so very thankful that I had a child with such an audacious personality, somebody that was so bold and lived so out loud. And he lived life with a fullness that some people who live 90 years don't do. And so, over time you grow to see the appreciate the love that existed, and how you can see it differently.
Mm. And you made the decision to become a grief or to train in grief counseling yourself as
I
well.
did.
Yeah.
I did.
And
I
helped
wanted to
you.
understand it.
Yeah. And it helped you understand it.
It did. It helped me understand it. It helped me learn how to talk to people. It helped me understand what I was feeling. Oh, this is very normal. This is very right. The loss of a child is a unique loss. Most of us will lose. One spouse always outlives the other. That's just an absolute
Mhm.
truth. Most of us at some point will lose parents. Most people do not outlive their children. So it's a small group of people. And certainly research says it can be the most debilitating loss. And so I wanted to find a way to support other people who ended up in that situation, because research says you can have the most pathological grieving as
Mm.
someone who's lost a child. And I want people who have lost a child to know that there's a way on the other side, and I can love and honor my son in death just like I did in life.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when that grief is so raw, it's so difficult to see that
Yeah.
other side. Yeah.
Yeah, so difficult.
Yeah.
So this isn't, and to your point, I didn't do this week too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took time. And, as I thought about his life and who he was, I pulled on his resilience,
Mm.
right? He was a solutions oriented guy. He wasn't one who backed down from any challenge in his life. And so I reference that a lot on during difficult times. What would Darius do? And he's my frame of my guide. This kid, he's the reason I became a nurse. He was very sick as a baby. The nurses took such good care of him and me that I said, I want to do that for other people. And now he's the reason that I've entered this chapter too. And so he's quite the inspiration.
Yeah. He's left a big legacy.
Yeah, really has.
He really has. Yeah. And you mentioned one of your gifts in Timely Presence is the sun crystal, which really made me smile because one of my ex-employees bought me a sun crystal, and sometimes I sit there in the lounge and the sun captures it, and it's just amazing. All those, like you described, all those beautiful colors across the wall, and I often think, oh, hi Dad, just that. And it's just those, whatever your beliefs are, it's that's those words of comfort and seeing that light. What other gifts do you get in your, like, the yearly
Yeah.
package?
Yeah. So typically for most of our package, the first gift that comes is an engraved wooden memory box. And we kind of came up with that because there's so many things in that post-loss acute phase, right? There's
Yeah.
obituaries, there's photos, there's you've looked at letters and all this memorabilia, but there's no nice way to store it. Where do you put those things? And so that's the first gift, a way to keep memories close so you can go back to reference them. They're personalized with your person and their name and dates, and it's really quite gorgeous. My favorite gift, my personal favorite, is a wind chime.
Mm.
And it comes on the birthday, and I love it because it is interactive, right? So it talks to me. And there are days when Darius is definitely sending me a message. I believe this is him talking. So some days I'm like, kid, what is it? Just, just talking all day. But my neighbor, I came up with this. Someone sent me a gift when he died, and I one time, and I loved it.
Mm.
So I wanted to test. I was like, I love it. Do other people? So my neighbor, on her husband's birthday, I was coming up with the idea for timely presents. I got this one chime, I packaged it, and I just left it on her doorstep when she wasn't home. So the next time I saw her, she's out in the yard. She goes, Kelly, come here. I have to show you what someone left for me from on Mike's birthday. And so I go over and she takes me back, lives on a lake. She's in her mid 70s. She was up on a ladder hanging it. I felt, oh, this is terrible for a trauma nurse. I have to rethink that.
Yeah, and maybe put a guide in there when you send it to people.
But she hung it the day she received it. And she goes, Mike talked to me all night. I sat out here and all night long we talked to each other.
Mm.
And so I knew that it was a hit. And so, people love it. It's a birthday gift, which to me, birthdays are so intimate and personal. We do so much to celebrate the life. This is a way to talk about how life transitions. And so my favorite gift for the holidays, I wanted to do something that referenced all holidays, all beliefs, right? We capture everyone. And so we send a beautiful crystal votive candle holder. It really is just a reflection of light. None of our gifts are sad. All of them have memory in them, but life in them and
Mm.
light in them. And so that's been a fan favorite. But the last gift, the one that comes on the anniversary of death, the angel versary, it is a 3D engraved photo crystal. And so they're so realistic looking. It's stunning. And it's just a way to permanently kind of memorialize the love that you have. And so, there's other gifts, but those are really the ones I think that are the most impactful for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, packaged with love.
Yeah, they sound beautiful, and I can tell there's a lot of thought, care, and love that's gone into those ideas. And now, Kelly, obviously, we're in the UK here. Are we able to order from your timelypresence.com internet? Are you able to ship over to the UK?
We are not shipping internationally yet, but it is in the plan for 2027. So to be continued.
Okay, we will keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
And in the interim period, if people would like to come and find out more about you,
Yeah.
where can they find you?
Yes. So we are on Instagram and Facebook at Timely Presence or The Timely Presence on Facebook. So we've got a pretty active following. We do a lot of teaching, a lot of just how to show up for people in grief. If you are the griever, how to navigate through that. So we do a message a day, lots of information that's shared. And then our website will continue to have a plethora of resources. We have a blog we publish on weekly. And so I'm just trying to get the message over. Grief happens to all of us. If you are lucky to live long enough and love hard enough, you will lose someone. But we want to help people show up for one another in those times.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I mean, you're so right. Unfortunately, it is something the majority of us will experience, if not everybody. And is there anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation that we've had today at all that you feel is important for other people to hear?
I think just two things to those who know someone who's grieving or is looking to, I continue to say grief lasts much longer than the funeral. So should our support, whatever that looks like, be there. I remember the people who were there for me. I remember the people who weren't.
Mm.
And so show up however you do that. That is text, that is call, that's a card, that is just a brief message with no expectation of response, thinking of you. People get that and it resonates. And for those who are grieving, particularly those who are in acute phases or still really struggling, what I will say is it is a life disruptor. I absolutely understand that. And it is the absolute cost of loving. And so be patient with yourself. Know that life will never be the same, but life does go on. And so, and in time, find your ways to back to that.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. It's been lovely to have a conversation with you. I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us and share the stories about your son and also what you're doing now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
If you have in any way been affected by today's podcast episode, there are numbers at the end of the transcript which you can contact. We'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, there is also a link to that in the notes that go with this podcast. Have a great day.